Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Barbara Lopez, and I currently support the Center for Action and Contemplation in building relationships with outside partners within the Christian contemplative movement and with local community partners here in New Mexico. As we build and nurture our emerging movement ecology, the CAC truly believes that we function in relationship with others. There is so much work to do, and we are not in this alone. So I am very honored and grateful to be here today to introduce a valued CAC partner, the Poor People's Campaign. CAC honors and supports the work that the Poor People's Campaign brings to our world, and we hope that the CAC community can join them whenever and wherever you can in being agents of change for the many systemic injustices we are all faced with today. We are blessed to have with us here Reverend Casimir Brown and Dr. Adam Barnes from the Poor People's Campaign. Reverend Kaz currently serves as the National Director of Religious Affairs for the Repairs of the Breach and the co-lead of the National Faith Team for the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. She also serves as an ordained reverend in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And Dr. Adam Barnes is the director of the Religious Affairs program at the Cairo Center and co-lead of the National Faith Team for the Poor People's Campaign. Adam has worked at the Poverty Initiative Cairo Center since 2007. I want to welcome you, Reverend Kaz and Adam.
Thank you so much, Barb.
Thanks, Barb.
You're welcome.
It's great to be here.
Yay. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. We are excited to be here and to have this opportunity to talk more about the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, to learn about its history, about our organization and mobilization efforts, as well as our values. I am Reverend Casimir Brown. I just wanted to give a moment to kind of talk to you about how I got started in this work, why I'm here today. I actually started my work many years ago. I'm trained in public policy, and I knew very early on that I wanted to make an impact through public policy. In that, at the time, a lot of things were very siloed, so you would only address one policy issue at a time. But I knew then that I had many interests, and I saw the interconnections with those different policy issues. Fast forward a few years later, I also received the call of ordained ministry, and for me, it was just a perfect fit to be able to work with the Poor People's Campaign. I started out as a graduate school fellow while I was in divinity school when we were doing the 40 Days campaign, the launch. And for me to be able to combine the deep morals of my faith as well as the policy issues, for me, that is where it goes hand in hand, where I see the work and to be able to express that in full. So it's not siloed to one issue, and it's also not void of the language, the faith language that very much drives me to do the work that I do. So now I'll pass it over to Dr. Adam Barnes to give a little bit of background of how he got into this work as well.
Great. Thanks, Reverend Kaz. Yeah, so happy to be here. It's just, we've been excited all week. And so we're thrilled to get to our presentation. And we have a lot, so we don't want to waste too much time. But I did want to say a quick word in the same way Reverend Kaz did about how I ended up here. And I was actually in the Peace Corps out of college, or a little bit after college, in a country called Niger, West Africa, which is mostly Muslim. And it was there that I was exposed to the sort of, the reality of poverty, the extent and breadth of it, and also really the sort of inadequacy of the response. But one thing I did learn, and that kind of took me to my next step in life, was that religion actually in that context was where I was, that I saw it as something that was very much not abstracted from life. And that led me back to an interest in religion. I was originally a philosophy major in college. And so that took me to Union Theological, which is where I met Reverend Liz Theo-Harris, the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. And that was back in 2006. And I just got connected right away with them, and I haven't really looked back. And now we're 15 years later, and here we are in a campaign that's in 45 states across the country, and is continuing to grow and show its power and ability to influence the moral and economic and political direction of this country. So we, again, are just thrilled to be here. I don't want to waste too much more time. The plan for today is to show you a short video. We are not sure who's out there, but we know that there's many of you, and we're just excited. And we don't know, sort of what point what you know about the campaign and where you are, in your kind of context and experience. But we wanted to show you something visual so that we could give you a sense of what the campaign looks like. And in particular, we wanted to show the sort of spiritual, moral, religious dimension of the organizing. So this is a really powerful film that was put together a little time ago that just does just that. So we're going to show that, and then we're going to move from there into a discussion of a King quote, which you'll see gives us a chance to kind of dig into the three things we're hoping to communicate in this session, which are the history, the organization, and the values of the campaign. And once we're done with that, we hope there's time to engage with you all a little bit with some Q&A. So let's go for it and play the video.
Workers who make minimum wage are protesting across the metro Atlanta area.
And not just here, but also across the country.
And this is supposed to be the richest, most powerful United States or something. We can't get clean water to our people.
The fight for clean water, the fight for environmental justice, the fight for living wages, the fight for voting rights, the fight for health care are all interlocked. That's why we gotta have a Poor People's Campaign.
I'm getting together with all these people as a part of this, the Poor People's Campaign, and lifting up our voices together and demanding that we be treated with dignity and respect.
Oh, we're not free, and yet I swear this oath that America will be.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water, wade in the water, wade.
At the border where families are separated and we sing a song like wade in the water, God's gonna trouble the water. It's that interpretation, that deep interpretation. God is gonna trouble the waters. But not that God is gonna do it alone, not that we're gonna sit back and wait for God to do it, but that we're willing to be instruments. We're willing to raise our voices in songs. We're willing to walk into state houses. We're willing to do whatever it is to challenge these laws. We've been involved in the Poor People's Campaign, and it's taken us from coast to coast. When I'm in a room with such great diversity, no matter what separated us, in that moment, we were all one. We sang in one voice.
I want to thank you for coming all the way from California to bring this Mexica medicine to us. We're going to go and we're going to pray.
And then we go out, we always remember that we go in prayer. When this camp was started, it was started through prayer.
I'm doing this for my ancestors, many of who were on the Trail of Tears or who lost their land. But I'm also doing it for the future. My kids, we have to make sure that the water upstream is safe for everyone.
I want to thank everybody for coming out here and standing with us this day. We gather in a ceremonial way in prayer. You have guns, we have prayer. You have guns, we have prayer.
It makes me feel strong to be around all these people that care so much. Like, a lot of us left our kids to come out here just to talk to other people, and to organize and to share our stories together, because that makes us stronger people,
I was talking to my friend the other day out in Standing Rock, and he said the reason they're doing nonviolence in Standing Rock is not because they're weak, but it's because they're strong and they're exposing the violence. When you want to expose something, you can't be it, because then you look like what you're trying to expose.
I was taught early on that there's no separation between Jesus and justice, that to be a Christian, to be a person of faith, is to care about the least of these, not just in some mushy way, but to be engaged on the side of the fight for justice and equality.
I'm here as a preacher because I follow this brown-skinned Palestinian Jew who never charged a leper a copay.
I feel a calling, with many others, to engage this revival, to call people of faith back into the public square.
Everybody say Hineni.
Hineni.
That means here I am. Everybody say here I am.
Here I am.
When you called us, the Reformed Jews, to North Carolina, Reverend Barbara, what did we say?
Hineni.
Hineni. When Muslims and Christians and Jews, when leaders and clergy come together with the poor and with the marginalized, that's where we get the strength of God.
There's that commonality that we have across religious lines. We recognize humanity, we respect humanity, and we know that justice is God, and God is justice. And music helps to lift that. There are artists all over this country, all over this world, who are lifting these struggles in visual art and in music.
No human being will ever be illegal.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot.
It is this justice, this mercy, this kindness that God wants for us. May we heed God's charge to end poverty for all. Amen.
Amen.
I was raised as a Christian and have been a Christian my whole life. I was called to the ministry doing anti-poverty organizing with homeless folks in Philadelphia, looking at religious movements and seeing how those are always on the side of those that are oppressed, those who are facing poverty, and saying that this is not what God wants, this is not what our world needs, and something else is possible. If you are generous with the hungry and start giving yourselves to the down and out, your lives will begin to glow in the darkness. You'll be known as those who can fix anything. Make the community livable again. Amen, right? Amen. And I think that those biblical stories and the testimonies of the people in this room can be our resurrection.
We are on the Spirit of Struggle Revival Tour. This is a spirit of struggle. It's a spirit of connection. It's about what's on the back of that Michigan Welfare Rights shirt. You only get what you're organized to take.
Yes.
Yeah? And we're going to take back our dignity. We're going to take back our humanity. And we're going to turn this system around, right?
All right.
Right?
Good.
All right, so some of y'all know this, some of it's new, but y'all can figure it out. All right, here we go. Went down to the rich man's house, and I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. It's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Ain't no system gonna walk all over me.
We believe that God is on the side of the poor, that God takes sides. We, as a ministry, and me as a pastor, I take people's side. If a homeless encampment is being evicted, I take their side against the city. If one of my kids is beat up by the police, I take the side of that kid against the police department. Poverty in Grays Harbor is related to poverty in Detroit or in South Texas. All of our struggles are connected. We're struggling for life and struggling for what Jesus calls abundant life.
I just looked through that wall and I did not see criminals and rapists. I saw children. This wall is wrong. It is sinful. $40 billion going into this wall, not into health care, not into education, not into living wages.
The walls that they build to tear us apart will never be as strong as the walls of
our real job is to be human. And our job is to break border walls. Our job is to love each other, to stay connected.
The desert is hot, but we are the rain. The desert is hot, but we are the rain.
Oh God, help us to stand up courageously without ceasing against unjust tax and budget policy at every level. I think it was St. Augustine who said that hope has two children, anger and courage. Anger at the way things are. There's a certain kind of righteous indignation. It doesn't have to be this way. But then there's also, you have to have courage after anger to be willing to address it. And the courage to do it with love and nonviolence. And out of those things, we have a hope for transformation.
We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We will live for liberation, 'cause we know why we were made. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We will live for liberation, 'cause we know why we were made. We are not afraid. We are not afraid.
Each time I see that video, I get chills. It reminds me of what we do in this movement. It reminds me that we're a fusion movement. It reminds me of the power that the people have in changing systems that move everybody towards life. In the Poor People's Campaign, we have many different slogans, but one of them is that everybody has the right to live. And this is just an example of that. And so to move us further into our session, we wanted to actually go back into history. And when we think about the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, we have to give time and space to think about where were the origins of this movement and looking at the 1968 Poor People's Campaign. And so we're going to dive into a quote, piece by piece, that not only talks about the history, but it gets into the organizing efforts as well as the values of what this movement is about. Adam?
Yes, I feel the same way. I've probably seen that video, 100 times, but it just gives you chills, and I get all emotional. But but it's great, and thank you for that. So yeah, our plan is to work through this quote, and like Reverend Kaz said, it is a quote from Martin Luther King. The only other thing I would want to say is that part of, I think, our task as as people of faith, as just people, is and when we think about change, it is this sort of incredible balance between action and contemplation, which is what you all are about. And I think you never, there's actually a leader that had a big influence on a lot of us in this movement, named General Baker, who is quoted as saying, "Our task is to turn fighters into thinkers and thinkers into fighters." And not have that either one of those things dominate, but to know how one informs the other. So right now we're here and together and have this time to do a little intellectual work. So we're going to do that, and of course at the end we'll connect that back to how we take action. So we have a little bit of a slide show for y'all, and we're going to get started with this quote that we use very frequently in the campaign, and Reverend Casimir is going to help us read that together. So if we can go to the next slide, I think. Great.
Yes. The dispossessed of this nation, the poor, both white and Negro, live in a cruelly unjust society. They must organize a revolution against the injustice, not against the lives of the persons who are their fellow citizens, but against the structures through which the society is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand to lift the load of poverty. The only real revolutionary, people say, is a man who has nothing to lose. There are millions of poor people in this country who have very little or even nothing to lose. If they can be helped to take action together, they will do so with a freedom and a power that will be a new and unsettling force in our complacent national life. A quote from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., The Nonviolence in Social Change, from the Massey Lecture, December 1967. The first quote that we're going to the first quote you want to dive into?
Yes, thank you. There's a lot in there. Yeah, so we're going to go piece by piece. And this is the first piece. Go ahead, sorry.
So the first piece that we're going to dive into here is the first sentence. Next slide, saying, the dispossessed of this nation, the poor, both white and Negro, live in a cruelly unjust society.
Yes. Okay. So this is a couple of things. First, 1967, a year before the Poor People's Campaign launches. A couple of years after the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act have been passed, Reverend Martin Luther King has turned his attention towards human rights and towards building the Poor People's Campaign. Now, this quote is full of stuff, so that's why we're going to take it piece by piece. This first part is really critical. The way the King starts is to say the dispossessed of this nation. Okay, so that is who? The poor, the dispossessed, and he describes who that is. It's both white and Negro. So he's making the point here very, very clearly that it is not a urban problem. It is not a problem of Black people or any other specific colored people. It is a social systemic problem, and points out that it is very much a white problem as well. And if we think about the conditions today, they're actually much worse in many measurements than they were during King's time, they were living in a time of tremendous economic growth. But today we have 140 million people in our country who are poor or low income, which means that they either are below the poverty line or one paycheck away, which is twice the poverty line. And that's almost 43% of the country. And of those, if you break that down, which is what King wants us to do, which wants us to think about who this poor and dispossessed group is, you break that down, actually 0.5% of white people, 17.2 million, or 42% of the 140 million, 17.2 million are white, and so there's, I think it's more like, I think that I got that wrong, but anyway. Very big portion of that is white, and that's critical to show, because we often associate poverty with an urban Black or an immigrant, or and kind of forget that there is this broad scale and scope to poverty. Okay, so this is the first critical point of what King's trying to show in this quote, and then poverty in the campaign extends well beyond just those numbers, right? It goes into the reality that we're living with a lack of healthcare, an incredibly militarized society, a vast looming or present environmental crisis, and so King wants to make sure that we understand that those things are interlocked, and that they're not happening in isolation, but part of a deep systemic issue. So we'll get to that. But the first point here is this to see what poverty looks like. It looks like cross race, cross every divide that they in the country. Okay, next slide, please.
They must organize a revolution against the injustice, not against the lives of the persons who are their fellow citizens, but against the structures through which the society is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand to lift the load of poverty.
Great. Yes. Okay. So this is the next line. Who's they? They is the poor and dispossessed, which today we understand to be the 140 million people, right? And how do we organize? What do we do as a response to these incredibly, degrading and inhumane conditions? Well, we change them, and that's what King's saying, suggesting that we organize a revolution. Okay. Now, but the next part of his sentence is very clear about what that revolution looks like, right? It's not against individual people, not against the people that are directly in front of us, but the system for which they're carrying out the spiritual immoral logic of, right? And that system, as he says, is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand. Okay, so another very critical point here is that, number one, we started off, we said we're coming together across lines of division because that is the reality of the problem. It's something that affects us across all these divisions. Number two, we're going to come together and focus our attention not on each other, but on the system. And then number three, which I think is a very critical point and kind of counter to what we are told in so many different ways, there is enough. There is no scarcity in this land. We have more than we have ever had in human history. The only scarcity is that of the political will and moral vision to make sure that everybody has enough. Okay. Next slide, please.
And this is a representation. You can see right here, the fight the poverty, not the poor. Not only is it in the movement as we are marching, but you can see even Adam has it too in the background as well. And this is when we talk about going out there in the movement and bringing forth the language of the movement, you will see this, whether we are out in the streets, whether we are signing and sending a letter to a congressional representative, whether we are praying or in sermons or mass meetings, you will see this language, because as you saw in the video as well, the music, the cultural arts is all a part of the movement. So you'll see the fight poverty, not the poor. You'll see everybody's got a right to live. And that is permeating and also encouraging and a part of the spark that moves us forward. Next slide.
Yeah.
The only real revolutionary, people say, is a man, woman, person who has nothing to lose. There are millions of poor people in this country who have very little or even nothing to lose.
Great. Yes. Okay. So this is still the same paragraph, which is amazing, the amount of content that is in this. These speeches that King was really just a brilliant thinker. And we see here, we started with the first identification of the conditions. Conditions are pervasive across lines of division. And now we get to the further explanation of our response to this. And we know we have to organize, and we know that revolution has to be against the system. Now here, King is answering the question for us, who is that going to be? Who's going to be at the leadership of that? And what King says, that the only real revolutionary is that person who has nothing to lose. Now, let's think about that for a minute. This system that we're in, for some of us, it may be working okay. But for 140 million people, it is not working at all. And for there are definitely degrees in which it is causing even more harm. But the fact is that it is for so many people a system that is presenting you with two options. It's either going to slowly kill you or quickly kill you in some ways, or you're going to fight back and kill the system and stop it. Okay, and so that kind of clarity about both what it is that we're confronting in terms of a system that has very little value for life, and that tries to divide us and tries to say that it's our fault that we're poor, or that we don't have enough, or it's that it's my neighbor's fault. That is very clear to somebody who's on that wrong side of it. And so what King here is saying is that energy, that force, that clarity needs to be at the forefront of the leadership of a movement. Okay, and so we're going to get to the next part of this, but I think the one, I can see there's a lot of questions coming in, and I think we can take up some more parts of this during that. But I think just to underscore here that the King is not saying, King himself was not like materially poor, but he is saying, so he's not saying that King, can't be involved, but he's saying that this is what leads the way, and that's a very biblical, religious idea. It's a way that King and that the Christian tradition understands God to be on the side of the poor, that God is that which loves life, and that when any case where life is threatened or degraded, you will find God resisting that. And so this force of people who are being degraded by the system must be at the center of a leadership to change it. Okay, and this is very, very essential to how we have organized the Poor People's Campaign today. And any of our rallies, any of our actions, it is the voices, it is the leadership and vision of those who are most impacted that leads the way. It's how we have developed our analysis. It's how we've developed our moral budget. All of our policy priorities come from the experiences, vision of the poor and impacted. Okay. So then this is the second to last part of the quote. Next slide.
If they can be helped to take action together, they will do so with the freedom and a power that will be a new and unsettling force in our complacent national life.
Great. Okay, so this is the result of all of this analysis, both of what the conditions are, how what we confront and how we must confront it, and then I think it's just taking this last point to very clearly say, I don't know of any more common question that we get in this work than like, what can we do to help? And I would say, first of all, understand that it is not their problem, but it is our problem, that we are, whether or not I am poor myself, I'm probably like one step away or less to somebody who is in these conditions, or is a victim of any one of these evils that have been unleashed by this system: racism, militarism, environmental degradation, poverty, and then the twisted false narrative of religious nationalism. So what King is saying here is that we don't just go around and look for poor people and put those people up front. No, the poor oftentimes are casualties, are in need of assistance and in very serious situations. The poor have to be helped to take action together. Okay, so that is the job that we all have, whether we're poor or not, is to figure out how we can help the poor take action together, which is how King says. And he says if that happens, the result will be unsettling. If the poor can come together. And who are the poor? The poor, both white and Negro, across lines of division. If you look down any one of the lines of our actions these days, you will see the diversity of this movement, this coalition. And if those folks get together, it poses a very serious threat, because all of a sudden it goes from poor being these few marginalized people that live on the grates of cities or are trying to cross a border, to my neighbor, to myself. And when you start to identify in that way, the power is very substantial, and there is very strong evidence that King, as he moved in this direction in the last years of his life, became a target because of this position, both from his own side, from the left. The liberal media was turned against King and told him to go back to doing civil rights. There was even internal strife on his staff, as they tried to decide if this was the right way to go. And of course, the ultimate response of the state was that King was killed. And I don't think it's an understatement or overstatement to say that part of the reason that happened was because he was moving in this direction to really unsettle and call out the hypocrisy of this nation. So, okay. So that we made through. And now, next slide.
Beginning in the new year, we will be recruiting 3,000 of the poorest citizens from 10 different urban and rural areas to initiate and lead a sustained, massive direct action movement in Washington. Those who choose to join this initial 3,000, this nonviolent army, this freedom church of the poor, will work with us for 3 months to develop nonviolent action skills. And so what is wonderful about this is that as we have taken the first part of what King has said, there is direct action steps. So he laid out what was the issue, who is the poor and dispossessed, what is the power of those who get together. And it wasn't just a thought exercise. It was, now that we know this, we're going to take action. And there was concrete ways. He was saying, we're doing it when? In the beginning of the new year. Who's going to be a part of it? Those who are the poorest citizens in 10 different urban and rural areas, 3,000. And what's really interesting is that we see that it was already a fusion movement to begin with. We had people in urban areas, in rural areas, from 10 different locations, so geographically diverse, racially diverse. And then not only that, he says it's a sustained, massive direct action, a nonviolent direct action. So we, in this few couple sentences or few couple words there, sustain, we know that we're dealing with these structures, with these powers and principalities, that what we have to do has to be sustained. There is not one speech or one bill or one action that is going to change everything. It has to be something that is across time, but urgently, not that we're thinking, oh, it's going to happen across time, so we have a couple more years to wait. No, it needs to happen right now. And the wounds of the society are so deep that it has to be addressed right now, and you have to give the time for it to heal and to recover. And so not only that, we see a mobilizing force that is challenging powers and principalities, but there's a fundamental threat here to the economic power structure, that it's going to become a nonviolent army, that there is a freedom church that is arising, that is not only going to be moving forward, but they're equipped with skills, they're equipped with the language, they're equipped with the knowledge of how to make that change possible.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend Kaz. I think the one other thing I would want to just raise up in this last section of the quote is this idea of the Freedom Church, of the Freedom Church of the Poor, which is a powerful idea, and I think maybe worth going a little further into, because really what King is doing is challenging the idea of church here. When King asked for the support and sign-on of like major denominations for the Poor People's Campaign, and there were very few, if any. I think there was maybe one. I think it was the Episcopal Church that may have, but there were very few. I think I was the only one, and that reality that you have, organized religion failing to see the depth and scope of problem and not organized in a way to take action and to stand on the right side of history is something that we continue to struggle with. But I think for Reverend Casimir and I, like, we've seen that's actually been a lot different. And in fact, this this time when we launched the campaign, we have over, I think right now, 16 to 18 national faith bodies and denominations, which include not just Christian, but Jewish and Muslim and Unitarians and others, and then over 60 or 70 faith organizations that have partnered with us, and thousands of faith congregations and faith communities across the country. So that has changed, and I think part of what I just want to emphasize is that what King was hoping to do was to take, in a way, it was a moral revival, and I think that's part of why we call it a moral revival today, because King was trying to say, look, this what we're doing, this is church. When the poor get together and resist systems that are killing life, that is where God is. That is where that is a form of worship. And like when we come together and fight and resist, that is church, and that is the Freedom Church of the poor, in fact. So it's a powerful idea, and I think still relevant today, in of course, in how we're organized. In fact, the Cairo Center has organized a weekly service that is titled the Freedom Church of the Poor, where we come together, where we bring leaders from this campaign to share their stories, to share the struggles in a spiritual space, and that's a big part of the work that we have to do, is to redefine what church is, and how our understanding of our beliefs and practices have to be not only read and then carried out, but really understood and clarified through the struggle itself, which is what, if you look at the original genesis of many of these religious traditions, this is kind of what they were like. The poor that organized with Jesus thousands of years ago, they were organizing against the empire, and that's who the first church was those people who were putting down their nets and saying these are not living wages, and I'm going to have to organize and do something about this, and that became the church, and how you worshipped was by building the movement. So that is the last slide there. Now, what we have a good amount of time with, which we're happy about, is to share a little bit about what is going on with the campaign right now, and Reverend Kaz is going to lead us through that, and then we're going to open up to questions, and Reverend Kaz are going to do our best to talk through some of this with y'all. So I'll pass it to Reverend Kaz.
Thanks. Can we have the next slide? So you see that there's even in the chat, some have asked, what can you do to help? What can you do to get involved? And one of the ways is joining the movement. And as we were saying, when we're talking about interlocking injustices, the injustices of systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, and the healthcare, when we talk about militarism and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism, we know that that is a system, and we have to have a system that addresses a system. And so there is many different ways that we are approaching, that we're moving forward. And one of the ways that you can get involved is directly finding out, what state are you a part of? Where are you in the world? We have over 45 different state campaigns. We would love for you to reach out, and each state campaign has 3 tri-chairs that you can get involved in, a coordinating committee as well. And we would love for you to get connected directly with your state campaign. So you can go to www.poorpeoplescampaign.org/take-action. And right there, you will be able to find your state. Click on it. You'll have an email address that you can say that you're ready to join the movement and to get ready and to see what you can do to help. And they will directly plug you in. You'll be getting updates as far as what's happening in your state. You'll be getting updates as what's happening nationally. And when we talk about lifting from the bottom, we are very serious about that. So our state campaigns, that's our lifeblood right there. We want you to get directly involved in what's happening locally, what's happening regionally, what's happening statewide, because we believe in nationalizing state efforts. So that's one way that you can get involved there. In every state, They have different working groups you can part of. They have different actions you can be a part of. And all of that is connected with the larger national efforts that we have here. And in addition, we would love for you to join the Prophetic Council. The Prophetic Council is a group of individuals. We have over 2,000 folks, faith leaders, people of deep moral conviction who are, drawn to the language, the moral language that we're using. We're not using language of left versus right, but right versus wrong. And in this Prophetic Council, you'll be getting tools and resources to, if you're a person of faith or moral conscious, and when we say person of faith and faith leader, we're talking about all different types of faith backgrounds. This is a fusion movement, y'all. So it's not just one faith. We have people of faith, not of faith, different denominations, different spiritual background. We believe in making sure that everybody has the opportunity to come together in this space. So in the Prophetic Council, we have opportunities for folks that are connected to congregations, to faith communities, that they can get the resources and the tools to go out into their faith communities, go out into their congregations, and help, spread the message of the movement, to give them resources, to take action. And when we say take action, we don't just mean going out into the streets. We also mean coming together for educational forums and learning about the history of the movement and learning more about the different policies that are keeping folks in poverty. It's also, when we say take action, we have letter signing campaigns that are directly going to our congressional members. When we say take action, we have time for prayer services. We have time for meditation services. We have time for us to collectively learn about our stories. And that is what makes us powerful. And to join the Prophetic Council, if you email faithpartners@poorpeoplescampaign.org and you say you want to be a part of the Prophetic Council, we'll sign you up and you'll get emails and resources for you to stay connected and involved. And one of the exciting things that we are doing that is very much in line to what the King quote said as far as a sustained, massive action in DC. We're gearing up for June 18th, 2022. And that is a mass moral assembly of poor and low-wage workers in Washington, D.C. We believe we need to have a generationally transformative assembly in this moment. We cannot wait until another, election cycle. We need it right now. And that's why we're coming together in person in DC, in person and online. And we're going to have a massive moral assembly. So we would love for you to get involved in your states, love for you to join the Prophetic Council so we can see you in 2022. And that moment is not just a moment and that we're done. We know that that is a moment to launch us to the continued, sustained work that needs to be done. And so those are a few ways for you to get involved. This is also an opportunity. If you reach out to Faith Partners, you'll be reaching out to Adam and I. We would love to hear from you. We would love for you to get involved, to help you get more resources, to help you get connected. We have prayers, we have litanies, we have other services and videos that you can share with your congregation, to share with people you know, because we believe in when you're in the movement, you want to bring along other folks with you. So Adam, is there anything else as far as joining and getting involved that you would like to add?
No, that was great. I mean, there is one small thing. I think I just wanted to say, and this kind of gets into the questions, which I think we want to move to anyway, but a mentor of mine, it was Willie Baptist is his name. He told me that, the Poor People's Campaign, a lot of people are in the Poor People's Campaign and don't know it or don't call it that. And so I think when you get this question about how do we get involved, or there was one about can we get involved if we're not in the US, like the reality is that like anywhere in the world where people are refusing to accept that this is as good as it gets and that these systems are what we deserve, and are are organizing, that is the Poor People's Campaign. Like our job is to make sure is to build that and into a structure and power that can be, as King said, a new and unsettling force to help people take action together. So people are already taking action. I mean, if you're experiencing trouble getting healthcare or finding a job or paying off loans, like you're part of this campaign. And the next step is to get organized. So yeah, so in that sense, I think we all already are involved. A lot of times, I think that is a barrier to say, well, is there where do I sign up? Which meetings do I go to? But I think just even taking that first step and seeing that, like, this is my struggle. Like we got to do something about this. Now, you may not decide that the PPC is what you want to do, but as Reverend Barbara recently said, we may not need to be under the same banner, but we need to be in the same sort of struggle, same battle. So we got to get together somehow. And that's one of the things that I love about y'all, Center for Active Contemplation, that you have partners. You see the importance of making those bridges into other communities, because that's where we're at. We have to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk, get out there and make those connections with people. And really take the next step. So that's kind of all I wanted to add. But then I love a lot of these questions. I don't know how you want to go about this. I can start maybe with the first, and then we can just move down. What do you think?
That sounds good. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. So let me back to the front here. How does the Poor People's Campaign intersect with efforts to address inequities in the U.S. criminal legal system? How high levels of incarceration in certain communities lead to higher levels of poverty? Good question. Yeah, like I love the sincerity of this question. And I think what I would say, I guess, is that, first of all, I would kind of reverse the order of things and say that poverty leads to high levels of incarceration. I think most people that are incarcerated is because of a crime of poverty. That's I think somewhere like 95% of like renewed sentences or something. My wife is the policy director for the campaign. She has the exact number. She'd be horrified that I'm throwing out these numbers. But anyway, extraordinarily high number of people that are in prison is because they missed like a parole date or like a warrant that built up. And those things happen because people are trying to patch together two jobs and this and that. So all I'm saying is that like the poverty piece or the incarceration piece is almost an answer to the poverty piece. Like because there is so many people thrown on the wrong side of the system, the only way the system has to deal with those people is either to incarcerate them, to slowly kill them, or kill them very quickly, or just totally forget about them. And that's I think that's the reality. So we that's the first thing I want to say about that. But I think we also do engage with this issue of criminal justice and mass incarceration, and the way that the campaign is organized, in fact, is not as Casimir was saying. Like, we are organized in 45 states. We're not up here saying these are the issues that you should be concerned about. We understand that the way that this is going to be built is by those who are most impacted on the ground, connected to the issues, know which issue is going to move their community, are going to take that issue up. If it's incarceration in the community, and that's what's politicizing people, and that's what we want answers for, then that's going to be the issue that you take on. But the idea of a national campaign and a broad like coalition of people and issues to back that up is to give it strength, to give it power, and to show how my issue is connected to your issue, and together we're going to have a lot more strength and power. So that's what I would throw to that one, but or how I would answer that one. But Casimir, I would love to hear from you. Do you have any?
Yeah, and there's like more questions rolling in, so I'm going to try to.
I know. Okay, just move along.
Hey, this is great. Thank you so much for the engagement. One of the things that I wanted to add was when you talked about the policy numbers. If you're interested in learning more about the campaign, reading what we're about, but not only what we're saying, everything that we're saying is backed by a strong political and economic analysis. We have been working with economists. If you go to poorpeoplescampaign.org, poorpeoplescampaign.org. You can read about from our Learn section. There is multiple reports that you can go through. There is state fact sheets. There is the power of poor voters. There's the poor people's moral budget. We have our resolution. We have our Jubilee policy platform as well. So we encourage you to go into the website and learn more, to read the documents, to have the language, to share with others. When people ask, what can I do? Familiarize yourself with some of the reports, with some of the language. Some people are surprised to hear that there's 140 million poor people. When you have that knowledge and you're able to share it with others, that's something that you can do to help, whether it's in your church group, whether it's water cooler talk or virtual water cooler talk. Those are ways to help shift the narrative, as well as when you bring people along, we're able to build power. One of the things that I wanted to, I think one of the questions that we have as well was, a lot of religious people say, I know they say that helping the poor should be more of an individual concern and for organizations and for churches, not the government, and that the government aid has unintended and often negative consequences. How should somebody respond to this? Well, there's a number of ways you could respond to this, but I think what's really important is to recognize that when we're talking about poverty, we're talking about a system, and we're talking about a system that is rooted in policy decisions by the government. So it is, when we talk about the poor, we're not talking about an individual's moral inadequacy. No, when we're talking about the poor and talking about poverty, we're talking about decisions that have been made at the governmental level that has disenfranchised and oppressed people. So if we're looking at the system that has been one of the root problems, we have to address it at the root. And that does mean going to those who have been our elected officials and voting. That means going to our elected officials and say, hey, we need these policies, not policies that are incremental and fix 5% here or 10% here. We need policies that truly lift everybody up. And Adam, if you wanted to go to the next question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's so many great ones here, and I realize we probably aren't going to have time to get to them all, sadly. We're happy to, and I know Barbara can help us get these questions, and then we can, if you want to reach out to that email that the Reverend Kaz put up, we are happy to engage in all these. I mean, the one thing I wanted, or two quick things, if I could, Barb, is just to say that the question about the Freedom Church, that service happens every Sunday at 6 p.m. On the Kairos Facebook page, and on the, if you don't like Facebook, then you can watch on the YouTube channel. So that's that. And then voting rights. Oh my gosh, yes, we are doing a lot on voting rights. So there's a big voter research report that's coming out that shows the power and impact of poor voters, low-income voters, and we reached out to millions of them for this last election. And so, yes, very much we're on a fierce fight to ensure that there's an incredible effort to get to restrict the right to vote right now, and we're in a fierce fight to kind of reverse that and demand that people like Manchin, who are holding it up, step in and do the right thing there. So yes, there's a big effort around that. But I'll stop. I'm sorry. We have, there's a lot, and two preachers here that we can just talk and let to talk about this work. So apologies, but this has been great. I guess I'll throw it back to you, Barb, to help us wrap it up.
Thank you so much, Reverend Kaz and Adam. Yes, there are some pretty awesome questions here, and I just want to emphasize that the platform has a partner page that has contact information and more links on some of the campaigns and the efforts that the PPC is doing, and there's information there. And then your website is awesome, so it has also some learning resources as well. So go there if you have any more questions, and all the rest of the questions I'll make sure and get to Adam and Reverend Kaz so they know all of the wonderful thoughts and comments coming through here. But I just am personally very grateful to be able to work with both of you as we continue to bring our communities together in relationship. And your presence here is a great blessing to all of us and all of your work as well. And so with that, I just want to thank you.
Thank you so
Barb.
much.
That's
Thank
so
you
sweet.
all.
Yeah,
This
this
is
has been great, y'all. Looking forward to many more. Much
Yes,
love.
thank
And the
you.
movement we stay forward together and not one
Yes.
step back.
One step back. Yeah. Amen.
I love
All right.
it. Thank you. So now, everyone, thank you all for joining us. And I want to invite you to take a 30-minute break and then to please come back at 2:45 Pacific time to hear Brian McLaren weave together what we've experienced today with the teachers, with each other, and through these wonderful sessions. So thank you again, and see you back in 30 minutes.